Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today at my front porch as I show you how we went about setting up my pond for the season, as well as how we landscaped around it. So let's go. So there's a few things to do here. I need to pump out all the water out of this pond, give it a good scrubbing. I need to check the water lilies that are in there. I have, I believe, 2 of them. Make sure they look okay, see if they need dividing and fertilize them, and then fill back the pond. And I also need to get the pump up and running again. The next thing that needs to happen is all around the pond, I have a whole bunch of mini hosta. It is so cute and dainty. I got all of these from my mother-in-law's. And I've just been dividing them every year. So I'm just going to divide a bunch of them and also move them around the pond. And then finally, I have a bunch of weeding to do. There's a large piece of creeping phlox. It's very pretty. It's white, but you can see it is overgrown. It has a bunch of perennials. It has a bunch of weeds growing through it. So I'm going to dig out that whole entire clump. There are a couple of tools I'm using for this project for the pond. We have a shop vac, that's to pull out the water out of the pond. There's a brush just to scrape the sides and the bottom of the pond. And also we have the filter and pump that gets put into the pond. My husband was a huge help. He cleaned out the pond and the filter is in. And the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that we're going to have to give it about a week once we fill it up with water to see if some of the water is splashing out with the way the rocks are. And if it is splashing out and we see the water level dropping, we're just going to have to adjust the rocks a little bit to make sure that that's not happening. So the next thing I want to show you is I did take out the 2 water lilies. I don't remember the colors. They're either pink or yellow, and they sometimes bloom, they sometimes don't. One thing to keep in mind with this pond is that it is in a part sun area, and typically water lilies like full sun. So what I do though to help them out as best as I can is I've divided them once, and I'm going to probably divide them again next year. And then also I give them pond tabs, which is just fertilizer for my water lilies. And I'm just going to read you what it says on the side. It says use 1 tablet per gallon of soil each month during the growing season. Push the tablet 1 finger deep in the soil. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is just put in 1 tablet into each of these. Water lilies are very expensive, so I'm very happy that these overwinter in my area. I'm just pushing it in. I'm going to go ahead and place these back into my pond, and then we're going to fill up the pond. So the pond has been cleaned. I've gone ahead and fertilized my water lilies. The pond has been filled up, and now we're going to test out the pump and make sure that it's working okay. And it's like music to my ears. So again, we're going to just watch the level of the water and make sure that we're not losing any water as the water splashes down here. And over the next few days, I'll have a good feeling if the water is staying in the pond and the level is not going down. But if I notice the level is going down, we will need to make adjustments to the pump and make sure that we're fixing things so that the water doesn't splash. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start cleaning around the pond now. I'm going to start with this side of the water garden. And I just have some weeds in this area. I want to pull them out. Sometimes a weed really is a weed. Sometimes it's a baby seedling of a plant that's just in this area that shouldn't be. But I'm just going to remove them. So over here is some iris as well as bloodroot. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut the part from last year that's gone by of the iris. Optimally, this should have been done weeks ago when the iris was very small, but I didn't get to it, and it's totally okay. I'm getting to it now. It might just be a little bit harder to clean up this area now that the iris has started growing, but better late than never. This area is pretty shady, and the iris, there's 2 types of iris here, a variegated one as well as this one here. And I don't know the varieties, but I can tell you that they really have not bloomed for me. And I think it's because it's a little too shady in this area. So after I'm done cleaning it up, I'm actually going to divide the iris, and I'm going to take out the bloodroot, and I'm going to put it in a spot where it's a little bit sunnier. Okay, good. Got that out. I noticed also in here is some evening primrose, which if you have that, it spreads pretty readily, but it's beautiful. It has a nice yellow color to it. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to carefully take this all apart, and I don't know exactly where I'm going to put everything, but at a minimum, I'm going to take it all apart, and then we'll work on the next step. You can see when it comes to dividing this iris, it's pretty easy. There's one piece right there. Another piece. Here's a bloodroot. Another larger piece. Another bloodroot. This bloodroot got broken in half, but I'm still going to try to plant it. But I just wanted to show you the reason why they call it bloodroot. When you break the roots of it, it has like a red color sap that comes out of it. So I got a box and I just started putting the plants that I'm digging out into this container. I added some soil. I'll make sure I water it afterwards. It's definitely shady in this area. So I'm going to put some other type of plant here that will thrive better, do better in the shade. Optimally, it would be a shade-loving plant that has some height to it. So I'll have to start thinking about what I want to put here. I could try maybe some astilbe, some heuchera, something like that. Fortunately, the roots are pretty shallow. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start weeding, starting in this area here. But check out the mini hosta. So cute. And there's a bunch more hosta that's just starting to pop up. So I'm going to go ahead and start weeding now. Check out the little worm. Lots of worms out in this area of the garden. There's definitely some teeny tiny little weeds. I'm just trying to disturb them because I really can't pick them out. Okay, this section is looking good. I'm going to go ahead and keep weeding around the pond, and I'll show you what it looks like after I'm done. That was pretty easy. I got all the weeding done. So that gives me some room now to divide some of the mini hosta that I want to divide. And it also opens up some opportunity to put some annuals in here. And I want some instant color. I want to make this area pop. So we're also going to dig up some pansies that overwintered from last year. And we're going to put them in here for some nice pop of color. So why don't I go ahead and start dividing some of the mini hosta, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it. So we're going to divide this mini hosta here. And I want to be out a little bit. I don't want to be straight on the hosta, just so I can make sure I get the roots. Just gently trying to dig it out. I do not know the variety names of all these mini hosta, but I can tell you that I got all of them from my mother-in-law. And when I got them from her, they were all very small pieces. And I try every year to dig the mini hosta up so I can end up with more and more pieces. I've found that mini hosta get lost in the landscape, but putting them right up along my walkway next to this pond makes them just really stand out. So they have a pretty good root system to them. And what I like to do is shake off much of the dirt so I can see what I'm working with. And if I find any worms, I like to take the worms out. And now what I'm going to do is just pull them apart very carefully. I can see right here that these three will probably stay together, but let's see as I start pulling it apart. So that has a nice root system to it. I don't want to divide it further than that. So I'm going to put that aside. And I'm happy if out of this one clump I can get 3 or 4 clumps. I'm happy with that. Just trying to see another good place where I can kind of pull it apart. You can see it has a nice variegated leaf to it. So I'm happy with that. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces out of that. And you can see I still have some more here that I could divide. Why don't I go ahead and get these planted? So you saw that I ended up with 5 pieces. I've already planted the 3 somewhere else in this bed. I'm going to go ahead and plant these 2. When you plant the hosta, you want to make sure that the roots are in the hole, and you don't want to plant the crown of the plant too deep. So I'm showing you a nice close-up of how deep I'm planting it, pushing down, backfilling, and good enough for that one. Let's do another one. And this one here, you can see it actually has some new shoots coming off of it, which is exciting. What I love about the mini hosta is that they also have blossoms on them, just like the large hosta do. Something to look forward to. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and just give it a drink of water. Let it soak in a little. Give it a little bit more, and they should be good to go. This is the first time I've had this many pansies over winter. I'm not sure why I had so many pansies over winter, but I'm not complaining. So what I've been doing is just kind of picking from this area and putting the pansies all around my yard. So we're going to dig up some pansies from here and put them around the pond. And it's a pretty simple process. I mean, I'm just basically finding colors that are blooming that I like and digging them out. There's definitely a lot more yellow than purple right now. There is some purple, but just not as much. So I think I'm going to stay with mostly the yellow, and I'll put in a few other colors here and there, but it's mostly going to be yellow. I'm going to start with this, and if I need more, I'll come back for more. So let's head over. I'm just going to show you how I plant one of my pansies, and then I'll get all the rest of them done. So you just want to make sure you push it in the hole, backfill. And the big thing, because it is sunny and warm today, after I plant these pansies, I'll make sure I give them a drink of water. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of them planted. Don't the pansies look so sweet with the mini hosta? I just love the pop of color that they add to this bed. And one thing I wanted to mention is I do have irrigation in this bed, which is really nice. So that just helps with the watering. I think the fun part of this project has been completed so far. Now the part that I'm really not looking forward to, but I'll be satisfied when it's done, is weeding this whole mess and pulling out some of the perennials that reside here. And then after that, I'll be adding some perennials back into this bed. I did well with cleaning this side of the pond. There was a ton of the white creeping phlox. I was able to dig it up, and I'm going to divide it and move it to different parts of my yard. There was some coneflower that was getting shaded out by some rhododendrons that are here. So I'm going to move those to different parts of my yard where it's a little bit sunnier. And there was also some Queen Anne's lace, which is very invasive. And I left a little bit of it near the pond there, but I will have to pull up some of the rocks to remove the rest of the Queen Anne's lace. There was some coreopsis that was mixed in with the creeping phlox. And there was also some bloodroot. There were these 2 types of iris that we dug out on the other side of the pond. I had some pieces of that iris on this side of the pond as well. I found that sometimes it's nice to just have an empty slate to start with. So that's what I did, was just clean all this out, and now we're going to go ahead and plant some perennials back in this space. What we're looking at is my nursery bed. And while there are a lot of plants in here that I don't want and I intend to sell, there are a handful of plants that I overwintered in here. And I do want to pick from some of those plants and include them next to my pond. So let me get those and I'll show you what I picked out. I think I picked out a good collection of perennials here. Let me go over what I have. Down here are some English daisies that I started from seed. I actually winter sowed them 2 winters ago. So they're a 1 year old, and I'm going to divide them and put them near the border of this area. And the grass that has like a nice golden tinge to it, that is called the Bull's Golden, and it's a gold sedge. I bought those last year, and when I bought them, I divided those into 4 nice pieces. And then we have the red heuchera. I don't know the variety, but I thought the red would add a nice color in this area. And those I just divided from heucheras that I had in other places of my yard. Next, we have Jacob's ladder, and they're all budded up. They're ready to bloom. They bloom in the springtime. I also have those in a different part of my garden, and I just potted them up because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them. We have a hosta, and the hosta is a Hosta montana, but the real name is Ario marginata hosta. I thought that would look really pretty in this area. I'm basically trying to brighten up this area. It definitely looks like it gets a lot of shade. To be honest with you, I really haven't paid attention to this area. So I'm still learning if it's what kind of sun it receives. It definitely looks like this corner receives some shade more than sun. And then finally, I have 3 columbine, and I'm almost positive they're pink. I collected the seeds of a pink columbine from my yard, and then I winter sowed those seeds 2 years ago. So these plants are 1 year old now. And then what I'm planning to do is tuck in some pansies in here for some instant color. I'll put in some more annuals that once our last frost goes by, which is in a few more weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and get planting. All done. Isn't that beautiful? One thing I wanted to mention is that I don't mulch these beds anymore since I make my own compost. I top dress all my beds with compost every year, and that's my mulch. I find that it's just easier to be able to add the compost without having to deal with the mulch each year. So I just wanted to show you what everything looks like. Oh, I love that sound. So we'll see how these do with the amount of sun that they get. It's all trial and error because I've never put these plants in this area, but I think it looks really beautiful. Here's a close-up. It's always nice to get the free pansies. I just love listening to the sound of the water. It's so nice, and I'm going to be able to enjoy it now when I sit here and have my morning coffee. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, please drop them below. Until then, make it a great day with gardening.